My name is Camille Hart, and at 42 years old, I never imagined I'd be the reason a 300 million software company in Austin, Texas came crashing down. But when the executives at Corelytics forgot that my signature was on their founding license, they made a mistake they couldn't undo. I'll never forget the smug expressions the day they called me in, ready to toss me aside like I was yesterday's support ticket. What they didn't know, I'd read every word of the contract, especially the fine print they had ignored for years. Before I get into what happened next, drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from, and if you've ever been underestimated at work, hit that like and subscribe button. Because what happened next proves the quiet ones with legal receipts were the most dangerous. I never planned to shake up the tech world. I was just a systems architect with a knack for solving problems others couldn't touch. I grew up in rural Idaho, raised by a mechanic and a school secretary. My parents worked double shifts to send me to college. While others partied, I worked night security at the computer lab to afford my tuition. That grit saved me years later when the corporate games began. I met the team behind Corelytics 5 years ago at a data conference in Phoenix. I'd just finished a talk on dynamic data streams when Jared Price approached me, all designer glasses and slick charm. "That was brilliant," he said, handing me his card. "I've got an idea to revolutionize business logic, but I need someone like you to bring it to life." Over coffee, he laid out his vision. Abstract, messy, but I saw the potential and the gaps. He promised equity and co-founder status. I agreed. 16-hour days followed. I wrote the framework, designed the architecture, and built the algorithm that powered our core product. It all clicked after a sleepless 3-day coding sprint. But when I reviewed the draft legal agreements, my title had been reduced to technical consultant. I pushed back. "My name belongs on the founding license and the patent filings," I said. "Non-negotiable." Jared hesitated, then agreed. I read every line before signing. Buried in paragraph 19 was my saving grace, a 30-day clause allowing me to revoke license rights if terms were violated. I signed it that day, and one day I'd use it. "We need you focused on the technical side," Jared said, brushing off my concerns as if they were distractions. Heather Vaughn, who had once welcomed me with open arms, now barely made eye contact. When new hires joined Corelytics, my role in building the core system went unmentioned. The narrative shifted. Jared was suddenly the lone genius, and I just some early-stage tech support. Still, I stayed focused. I thought my work would speak for itself. After all, I wrote the architecture. My code was in every function and module. I believed recognition would come eventually. I didn't realize I was already being erased, one meeting, one newcomer at a time. 3 years passed fast. Corelytics ballooned into a $300 million enterprise with over 200 employees and a slick downtown headquarters. Gone were the days of creative chaos. Now, there were org charts, protocols, and gatekeepers. I was still the lead systems architect on paper. In reality, my influence had been stripped. The morning it all began to crumble, I got in early, as always, and opened an email announcing Brent Faulkner as our new CTO. No warning, no discussion. I confronted Jared. "You said I'd lead the tech direction." "It's not personal." He shrugged. "Brent's name carries weight with investors." Brent was from Google. Impressive resume, shallow grasp of our systems. In our first meeting, he misrepresented key design principles. Actually, I interrupted our framework. Prioritizes data integrity over speed. Brent smirked. "We'll need to rethink that." Speed sells. Then, Michael Lang, a senior dev, loyal to Brent, joked. "You mean our team now, right? That stung." Suddenly, my team was reassigned. My access limited. In meetings, my ideas were ignored until repeated by someone male. At an all-hands meeting, Jared rolled out a company timeline. My name was nowhere. The 3-day coding sprint that birthed our product, suddenly his epiphany. I confronted him. "That's how I remember it," he said with a shrug. "Memory's tricky." But it wasn't just about credit anymore. I spotted red flags, misuse of client data, unpatched security holes. I raised concerns, got silence in return. "You're being paranoid," Heather told me in my review. Despite stellar feedback and early project completions, I got to meet expectations. Male colleagues I trained rated higher. A leaked HR spreadsheet confirmed it. I was earning $20,000 less than new hires. When I brought it to Heather, she deflected. Some of them had competing offers. So I need an outside offer just to be paid fairly. She looked away. Your attitude's becoming a concern. And with that, I realized I wasn't just being overlooked. I was being eliminated. That night, I began documenting everything, my contributions, the ethical issues I'd flagged, and every instance of exclusion. I didn't know what was coming next, but my gut told me to be ready. A week later, my access to the main project repository was revoked. No warning, no explanation. IT called it a glitch. Funny how it never got fixed. I reached out to Ryan Delgado, a founding team member who'd left 6 months earlier. We met at a quiet cafe off South Lamar. They did the same thing to me, he said. Once Series C funding landed, Jared and Heather started forcing out anyone who knew how things really started. But why, I asked. We still contribute. Ryan leaned in. Acquisition rumors. Something big. Word is, Nexara Systems is eyeing Correlytics. Jared and his circle stand to make tens of millions if no one complicates the ownership story. That was the first I'd heard about a buyout. As a named contributor on the core license, I should have been in that loop. I called Jillian Morris, a longtime friend and intellectual property attorney. After reviewing my documents, she said, "You need to act fast. Send a formal notice. Establish a record before they move further." That night, I drafted a professional letter. No threats, just a clear reminder that I was a named co-developer on the original license and expected inclusion in any major decisions regarding company structure or tech usage. I mailed one copy to the board and hand-delivered the other to Heather. Her smile faded as she read it. "I'll make sure Jared sees this," she said flatly. 3 days later, I got a meeting invite from HR. Subject line discussion. Things changed overnight? Conference rooms shut their blinds when I walked by. Conversation stopped cold when I entered. On Tuesday morning, I arrived early for an architecture review and overheard Jared through his office door. "Move everything to the secure server by Friday. No legacy access," Heather replied. "What about Camille? She still has admin rights. Handle it. Nexara can't see anything messy in the audit." That afternoon, I got a sudden calendar update. My performance review was moved up 2 months. Brent Faulkner would lead it. He barely knew my work. The review, brutal. He questioned approved projects, dismissed metrics, and called my documentation excessive. "We're placing you on a performance plan," he said, smirking. "The goals, vague, unmeasurable. Be more flexible. Think big picture." When I pushed back, he said, "That's exactly the issue. You're too technical." I knew what this was. They weren't managing me out. They were erasing me. The IT help desk told me my access was removed due to a security protocol update. I'd need manager approval to restore it. Of course, my manager was conveniently out for the week. I logged in through an old admin account I'd kept just in case. What I found made my stomach drop. Entire directories tied to my original architecture had been moved to a restricted server. The commit history had been scrubbed, my initials replaced, comments rewritten. They weren't just pushing me out. They were erasing me. That night, I backed up everything I could access. Legally, emails signed, documentation code with digital signatures, license records, everything proving I had built the foundation of Correlytics. I saved copies in secure cloud storage and with my attorney, Jillian. I reached out to others from the early team. Sarah Jenkins, ousted months earlier after raising data privacy concerns. James Patel, who resigned after being passed over by newer hires. The pattern was unmistakable. If you believe in standing up for what's right, especially when the odds are stacked against you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. There's more to this journey, and I'd be honored to have you with me as the next chapter unfolds. They started deleting my name from documentation too, Sarah said. I didn't fight. I wish I had. James had consulted a lawyer. I had a case, he told me. But the NDA and legal fees. It wasn't worth it. The full picture was taking shape. I scheduled a meeting with Benjamin Harris, a corporate IP attorney specializing in founder disputes. His office was on the quiet east side of Austin neutral ground. He reviewed everything carefully, highlighting one crucial clause, the 30-day notice rule tied to license revocation. "Camille," he said, leaning back, "if they violate the terms of your license or the founding agreement, you have grounds to pull their rights to the tech. If I did that, they'd be legally barred from using your framework. And the acquisition, it would crash. But they must know this already." Benjamin gave a knowing smile. Companies forget. People move on. And legal teams often trust whoever's in the executive seat. So what now? Keep doing your job. Let them make the next mistake. 3 days later, it came. A meeting invite from HR subject line discussion. I drafted a final letter reminding them of my position, the license terms, and the 30-day clause. I sealed it. The next morning, I arrived dressed sharp with my personal effects packed in a small box. I knew I wouldn't be coming back. The conference room was quiet when I walked in. Jared, Heather Brent, and Stephanie Ward from legal sat across the table, 4 against 1. And they didn't offer coffee. "That won't be necessary," Jared said coldly, cutting off Stephanie's attempt to read my letter. His voice was flat, clinical. "We're not here to revisit ancient history." Heather opened the folder in front of her. "After a thorough review of your performance and conduct over the last several months, Corelytics has decided to terminate your employment effective immediately." Even though I saw this coming, the words hit like a blow to the chest. 6 years, thousands of hours, code that made them all rich, dismissed like I was handing in a key card at checkout. Heather continued, avoiding eye contact. "This file documents a pattern of insubordination resistance to change and creating a toxic work environment." She flipped a page. "Your unauthorized access to secure servers was the final issue." Unauthorized, I kept my tone even. "You mean logging in with my admin credentials to access code I wrote?" "Those permissions had been revised," Brent interjected. "You bypassed security restrictions." "Restrictions no one informed me about," I replied. "And as a named co-developer of Corelytics' core platform, I have legal rights to that technology." Jared laughed sharp and dismissive. "Your name on some old license doesn't mean anything, Camille. Corelytics owns everything you built under standard work for hire." I met his eyes. "Actually, the founding license predates my employment contract. It preserves my co-creator rights and states that use of my contributions is contingent on the terms outlined in paragraph 19. Stephanie's expression twitched. "Which paragraph?" Before I could respond, Jared cut in. "It doesn't matter. This is a performance-based termination." Heather slid a paper across the table. "Here's your severance offer, 2 months' pay, but you'll need to sign a non-disclosure and non-disparagement clause. Today." Beside it was the letter I had delivered earlier. Heather lifted it slowly, then tore it in half, and again, feeding it into a nearby shredder. "The concerns you raised are without merit. Your employment ends today. Your access has been deactivated." She pressed the phone. "Security to conference room B." Frank, the security guard I always greeted downstairs, stepped in. He looked uncomfortable. "Please escort Miss Hart to her desk." I gathered the few items I hadn't already removed: a mug, a small plant, and a photo of my parents. As the elevator doors closed, Frank finally spoke. "For what it's worth, Camille! This isn't right." His words almost cracked my composure. "Thank you, Frank. Take care." And with that, I left the company I helped build carrying only a box and my resolve. The logo I'd helped design still hung in the lobby, but the energy of success now excluded me. The receptionist didn't meet my eyes, clearly instructed to stay silent. I pushed through the revolving door into the bright Austin morning, suddenly unanchored from the routine that had defined me for 6 years. In my car, the facade cracked. Tears came hot, bitter. I gave myself 5 minutes to grieve. Then I wiped my face, started the engine, and called Benjamin Harris. "They did it," I said. "Full termination." They shredded my letter and told me my name on the license was worthless. "Did you sign anything?" His voice was calm, steady. "No." I walked out with the documents untouched. "Good. Bring everything to my office." Walk me through it word for word. Benjamin's office became my war room. I recounted everything as he took meticulous notes. When I mentioned Heather shredding my letter, he looked up. That was a mistake. It shows willful disregard of a legal notice. And Jared calling your name worthless, that'll work in our favor. What now? Now we wait. The 30-day clause in your license is our pressure point. Let them move forward. Let them assume you're neutralized. And after 30 days, if they haven't resolved this, we trigger the clause, revoke the license. It'll send the acquisition into freefall. They'll fight it. They can try. But your documentation is solid, and no buyer wants to inherit disputed IP. For the first time in weeks, I felt something unfamiliar hope. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming what I built. So I waited, but I didn't sit still. That evening, Sarah Jenkins texted, "Heard what happened. Can we talk over coffee?" She gave me the inside scoop. They're calling it a performance termination, but no one's buying it. Everyone's whispering about the acquisition. Sarah. She nodded. $350 million deal. Jared stands to make $40 million. They're scrubbing anything or anyone that might cause legal issues. When's it closing? Due diligence is underway. 5 weeks from now is the target. 5 weeks. Just over 30 days. Perfect. That night, I let it all hit me, the betrayal, the erasure. But beneath it all, one thing pulsed louder than anger. Clarity. They thought they'd erased me. But I was just getting started. Benjamin sent a measured reply to Coralytics. Ms. Hart is currently reviewing the termination documents with legal counsel and will respond within the consideration period allowed by law. In the meantime, this email serves as a written reminder that Ms. Hart remains a named contributor on the founding license for Coralytics' core technology, with all rights and protections intact. There was no reply. But on day 5, Coralytics issued a press release announcing a strategic transformation and a major business development to be revealed soon. The stock spiked 15%. Analysts immediately speculated that Nexara Systems was behind the movement. Benjamin reviewed the release and nodded. They're building hype, trying to create momentum and lock in investor confidence. Day 7. My phone rang. Caller ID Diana Foster, Coralytics' marketing director and longtime Jared loyalist. "Camille," she said sweetly, "I just wanted to check in. The way things ended was so unfortunate. Was it? I just thought you should know." She continued that everyone respects what you did in the early days. Even Jared. Funny. He said my name on the license was worthless. She paused. He was just frustrated. "It's been stressful with the acquisition and all. Your letter came at a tough time." There it was. The slip I needed. Proof directly from the inside. "My timing," I said flatly. "You mean reminding you of the legal obligations you were about to overlook." "Oh, come on, Camille. We both know those documents don't mean much anymore. The company has evolved. Legally, they still mean quite a lot." Diana sighed. "Look, Jared asked me to call. He thought you might be planning something. He wanted me to remind you, going up against a company like Coralytics would be costly. You could have taken the severance." "I'll take that under advisement," I said, ice in my voice. "Anything else?" "Just be smart about this. People were laughing about your letter. No one thinks you have any real leverage." I ended the call, then immediately rang Benjamin. He was energized. "That's gold. They're nervous." And Diana admitted they've read your letter contradicting their official position. Day 10. Their silence told me everything I needed to know. They were moving fast, and they still thought I was bluffing. Benjamin sent a formal letter to Coralytics' board of directors, clearly outlining my position as a founding license holder and expressing concern over the company's treatment of me as a co-developer. It was sharp but strategic enough to put them on notice without tipping our hand. Their response came from a different law firm than usual, one known for high-stakes mergers. The tone was icy and aggressive. They dismissed our claims as without merit and warned against disrupting legitimate business operations. We had struck a nerve. Over the next several days, Benjamin built our case. He brought in intellectual property analysts and forensic accountants to dig into Coralytics' product lines. The results were clear. At least 80% of the company's current offerings still relied on my original licensed architecture. Even the newest releases were built on my framework. While Benjamin worked the legal side, I stayed active. Through industry contacts, I arranged coffee with Jessica Williams, the technical director at Paradigm Software, a smaller firm known for innovation and ethics. "Your reputation precedes you," she said as I shared my story in broad strokes. "We've followed your work for years. If you're open to new opportunities, we'd love to talk." Later, Thomas Peters, Paradigm's chief product officer, joined us. "We need more leaders like you people who stand for principle, not just profits." Their encouragement hit me harder than expected. It reminded me that Coralytics' toxic culture wasn't the whole industry. There were still places that valued integrity. By day 20, Coralytics' silence was deafening. No emails, no calls, nothing. But from old colleagues still inside, I learned the deal was moving quickly. Nixara's teams were now on site. Presentations were being rehearsed. The mood was confident. "They think you're bluffing," Sarah texted. "Jared told the exec team you won't actually do anything. Said you've always been all talk." Day 25. 5 days left. Benjamin placed a calm but pointed call to Stephanie Ward, their in-house legal lead. "Ms. Hart remains deeply concerned about the company's dismissal of her legal rights," he said. "As the 30-day notice period nears expiration, we are offering one final opportunity for Coralytics to resolve this amicably before she exercises her right to revoke permission to use the licensed technology." They had 5 days left, and they still didn't believe I was serious. Day 30 arrived with crisp clarity. I dressed deliberately, navy blazer, low heels, clean lines. Today, Coralytics would learn exactly what my name on the founding license was worth. At 7:30 a.m., I stepped into Benjamin Harris's downtown Austin office, now transformed into our command center. Multiple laptops, a large monitor displaying Coralytics' stock price, $91.84, and climbing, and fresh coffee waited. Benjamin handed me a mug. "Are you ready, Camille?" I nodded. "I've been ready since the day they shredded my letter." At precisely 8:00 a.m., Benjamin submitted the formal license revocation notice to the U.S. Patent Office. Simultaneously, physical copies were hand-delivered to Coralytics HQ, its legal team, every board member, and Nexara Systems executive offices. At 8:30, our PR team distributed a press release to top tech and business outlets. The headline was "Direct and Disruptive: Founding Developer Revokes License for Coralytics' Core Technology, 350 Amateurs Acquisition in Jeopardy." The release outlined my role in developing the company's core platform, included the 30-day notice clause, and explained how repeated attempts at resolution had been dismissed. I gave a single quote: "Respect for intellectual property and recognition of founding contributors are not negotiable. They are the foundation of every ethical company." At 8:42 a.m., TechCrunch called. By 9:00, my phone buzzed with back-to-back calls, journalists, former colleagues, even investors I hadn't spoken to in years. Benjamin handled press responses with surgical calm. At 9:15, Coralytics stock was halted after dropping 21% in 10 minutes. At 9:27, I saw Margaret Steele's name flash on my phone. I let it go to voicemail. At 9:35, Stephanie Ward rang Benjamin directly. He answered on speaker. "This is outrageous," she snapped. "Ms. Hart's actions are destructive and reckless." Benjamin remained calm. "Camille followed every legal step outlined in the founding license. We gave Coralytics ample time to address the issue privately. You chose silence. You've jeopardized a $350 million deal," Stephanie hissed. "No," Benjamin replied. "Your client did by trying to erase a founder and ignoring legal obligations." A long silence. "Where do we go from here?" she asked quietly. Benjamin looked at me. I met his eyes, then gave the nod. "We're open to a formal discussion," Benjamin said. "But this time, it will be on our terms." Stephanie's voice came cold and clipped. "Mr. Harris, Your client has just committed tortious interference with a business transaction. We will pursue damages to the fullest extent of the law. Benjamin didn't flinch. Ms. Ward, my client acted entirely within her legal rights as explicitly outlined in the founding license agreement. We attempted multiple times to initiate dialogue with Corelytics' leadership and were repeatedly ignored. The 30-day notice provided ample opportunity for reasonable resolution. The founding documents were superseded by her employment contract, Stephanie insisted. That's incorrect, Benjamin replied. Her contract explicitly excludes previously granted intellectual property rights as detailed in Addendum B, something your legal team seems to have overlooked. We also have documentation of Camille's attempts to raise these issues, including the letter your HR director destroyed in her presence. There was a pause. Stephanie's tone softened. What would it take to resolve this immediately? At this point, board-level involvement, Benjamin said. Camille is open to discussion, but only with decision-makers empowered to resolve the full scope of the matter. After the call, Benjamin turned to me. They're scrambling. That's a good sign. By 10 a.m., media outlets reported that Nexera Systems had paused acquisition due diligence amid intellectual property concerns. Corelytics stock dropped another 15%. A text from Diana Foster, the marketing director, flashed on my screen. What have you done? Richard's losing it. The office is chaos. I didn't reply. At 2 p.m., we received an email settlement offer. They proposed reinstating my role with a promotion, a generous compensation package, and public acknowledgement of my contributions if I withdrew the license revocation. This is their opening bid, Benjamin said. Notice how they're still trying to absorb you rather than address your independent rights. We responded carefully, making clear that resolution would require acknowledgement of past mistreatment and structural protections for future contributors. By 3:30 p.m., Corelytics issued a press release calling the issue an unfortunate misunderstanding with a valued early contributor. The markets weren't buying it. By close, the stock had lost 28%, wiping out nearly $100 million. When Richard finally got through to me, I told him, all discussions go through Benjamin. You're not vindictive, he said. You're a builder. I still am, I replied. But now I'm building consequences. By 7:30 p.m., the board had hired crisis consultants and a new IP law firm. A special committee was formed to investigate. What began as dismissal had become a full-blown corporate crisis, and we weren't done yet. 4 days after the revocation, we received a formal settlement offer that directly addressed our demands. First, substantial financial compensation, structured not as severance, but as recognition of my intellectual property and role as co-developer of Corelytics' core technology. Second, a public acknowledgement of my foundational work with updates to internal materials that had previously erased my contributions. Third, a binding commitment to implement a founder recognition policy and an ethics oversight committee to enforce fair attribution practices. Fourth, leadership changes. Richard and Margaret would be stepping down, and the board would take over operational accountability. Crucially, the agreement didn't require me to return to the company. It respected my independence while restoring my rightful legacy. After detailed discussions with Benjamin and our advisors, I accepted with terms ensuring compliance before license reinstatement. A week later, Corelytics issued a press release about restructuring in alignment with company values. Richard's exit was framed as amicable. Margaret's role was dissolved. Stock prices began to recover, but the Nexera acquisition remained paused. Then came a private message from Eleanor Richards. The board has reviewed years of internal communications. What was done to you wasn't just negligent, it was intentional. We owe you more than an apology. 3 months later, I sat across from Eleanor and the new CEO, Andrew Mitchell. This time, the room radiated respect. All terms have been fulfilled, she said, passing me a folder detailing the reforms. Andrew nodded. The company lost its compass. You helped us recalibrate. My consulting role was modest, but meaningful, ensuring contributor recognition and ethics-based systems in Corelytics' product development. Meanwhile, my new venture with Jessica and Thomas, Equitable Innovation, was gaining traction. Built on fairness, our team included former Correlatex employees, eager for a culture of mutual respect. Your story's a case study now, Jessica said. Companies are rethinking how they honor creators. Messages poured in. Writers, scientists, developers, each inspired to reclaim their voice. The path hadn't been easy, but it was worth it. 1 year after the revocation, I delivered a keynote at the Northeast Tech Conference titled Founding Footprints: The Ethics of Attribution in Tech. My name was once deemed worthless. I told the crowd, but that value was never theirs to define. If you've ever felt erased, I hope you remember your name, your work, your legacy. Those are yours to protect. Speak up, document everything, and never let anyone write you out of the story you helped create. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening, for caring, and for standing with me. My story might be personal, but it's not unique. Every day, people like you fight to be seen, to be credited, to be treated with dignity in environments that sometimes value profit more than people. If my experience has reminded you of your own struggles, I'd love to hear about them. Share your story in the comments. Tell me what you've had to fight for. Let's create a space where hard-earned contributions are respected, not erased. I've learned that speaking up isn't about ego, it's about legacy. If you've ever stayed quiet to keep the peace, I understand. But let me offer this: silence rarely protects your worth. Document everything. Learn your rights, and when the time comes, don't be afraid to stand your ground. You deserve credit. You deserve fairness. And most importantly, you deserve to be part of the future you helped build. If this story moved you, please like the video and subscribe. Not just for me, but for every creator, innovator, and quiet builder who's been told their name doesn't matter. Let's prove together that it does, and always will.